Hi there, Ford owners. Today on your 2018 Ford Escape, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install CURT's 1¼ trailer hitch receiver. And this is what our hitch looks like when it's installed. It's a 1¼ receiver that we can see here at the back, but our cross tube for the most part is pretty well hidden back behind our bumper. You might be able to see just a touch of it here at the bottom. But for the most part, unless you're getting down on your knees and stuff, you're never going to see this. If you're standing up, you're just going to see the receiver there. So it doesn't really detract from the looks of the vehicle. This is a 1¼ by 1¼ receiver, so it's going to be great for accessories and some very light duty towing. Majority of things you'll use this for would be like bike racks and cargo carriers, but we do have drawbars here if you had a small trailer that you needed to pull. You'll secure your accessories to your hitch using a 1/2" hitch pin and clip. Now, one doesn't come included with the hitch, but we've got plenty available here at eTrailer, and you can also get locking ones to protect your investments. On bottom, we have hoop style safety chain loops with a pretty large opening that should accommodate just about every shape, size, and style of safety chain. Our smaller ones here goes on and off with ease, and our big guy, same story. This is a Class 2 hitch that offers a 350-pound tongue weight, which is the force going down on top of our receiver. With 350 pounds available to it, that should be enough for a 4-bike platform rack, fully loaded up with 4 bikes. It's not going to be enough for the largest cargo carrier that we have here at eTrailer, but you should still be able to use a cargo carrier and get quite a bit of gear on it to free up some room inside for either more gear or an additional passenger. Now, you do want to keep in mind that the tongue weight is referring to all the weight that's inside of the receiver, so that's going to include the weight of any accessories like your cargo carrier plus the weight that's put onto the cargo carrier. You need to add all that together and make sure you don't exceed the tongue weight on here. It also offers a 3,500 pound gross towing capacity, which is how much that it can pull behind it. And with 3,500 pounds available, if you've got a small boat like a John boat or a jet ski trailer or something, you should have no problem pulling this with that. Even some of your really small campers, like pop-up campers and stuff, you should be able to pull as well. Now, as always, I recommend that you verify in your vehicle's owner's manual and ensure that you don't exceed any of its towing capacities. Now, I've got some measurements for you to help you when deciding on accessories. From the center of our hitch pin hole to the edge of our rear bumper, we're right at about 5 inches. And this is important when determining if your accessories will contact the bumper when inserted into the receiver, and if they can be placed in the upright storage position without contacting the bumper. And from the ground to the top inside edge of our receiver tube, we're right at about 14 inches. And this is important when determining if you need a drop, a rise, or a raise shank on your accessories. We'll begin our installation here at the back of the vehicle. We need to get our exhaust lowered down so we can get our hitch and stuff into place. To drop our exhaust down, you'll see the hanger is located here. There's 2 bolts that hold this hanger in place. We're going to grab a 13mm socket and we're going to remove both of these bolts. And when I go to remove this one, I'm just going to support it just a little bit. And now we went over to the other side and we've got the exact same hanger over here, so we're going to remove this. Now, our exhaust runs above our suspension here, so it's not going to be able to lower down too far because it's going to hit our suspension, but it'll lower down far enough to allow us to get our hitch in place and kind of modify our heat shield as we need to. So again, supporting. And then we'll just let it kind of come down. Now we're gonna, on the driver's side here, we need to modify the heat shield. Part of it is gonna be in the way of our hitch being able to clamp properly to the bottom of the frame. So very close to where we had removed our exhaust hanger here, if we go straight back from there, you're gonna find a stud sticking out and there's a nut on it. We're gonna remove the nut from that stud with a 10mm socket. And that's going to allow us to pull this heat shield down just a little bit. Now we need to trim out our heat shield here to allow our hitch to fit. So from about this point here, we're going to trim across, and then we're just going to trim straight down to get rid of the rest of that section of heat shield there. I'm just going to use some tin snips to do this. You could use a cutoff wheel, just whatever you've got available. If you do use tin snips, just be careful because it does tend to leave sharp edges. It also kind of does when you use a cutoff wheel, but usually not quite as bad as with the tin snips. So we're just coming in and trimming to about there. And I think it's probably going to be, let's see, you might come to about this point just because we have a little bit better angle to work with, so we can trim from here going to the rear. And then the section there, I think is going to be easier if we go from the rear towards the front. All right, now that we've got that removed, we can kind of just push that heat shield back up into place there. Take the nut that we had removed, and looks like we may even need to trim back just a little bit more. That hole there is still kind of exposed. So we're gonna trim just a hair more back and then we'll reinstall the nut. All right, again, we can just push that up on there. And then we'll put our nut back into place and then run it back down. All right, and then on the passenger side, it's a very similar story. There's no fastener though here at the back, so we're just gonna trim this off. I am gonna leave a small portion here towards the front, so that way, when we put the hitch back up, it'll clamp a little portion of it there, just to prevent any kind of rattling that could happen from our heat shield. So we're just gonna come in. I left maybe about an inch of material left there. And then we're just going to trim it going back. And we'll just push that all back up into place. And again, that's just going to allow the hitch to kind of act as the support for that. Originally, it was our exhaust hanger here, but we need to feed some stuff in there. So now we need to get our hardware to be able to feed into the frame. So the pieces that we need to feed in there are our spacers, and we can see that those are going to have no problem sliding up into the frame. We can feed them in through this hole here. But our carriage bolts here, the head of the bolt, it's going to be a little bit too large to fit up in there. So we're going to have to modify this hole a little bit to be able to feed our hardware in. So we're just going to take a grinding bit here so we can grind some of this out to allow that to fit. You can use a file as well to do so. All right, so now we're just gonna check our fit. You can see we don't have to take a whole lot of material out. Usually the way I do it is whatever side I grind on, I insert the bolt kind of opposite. So I'm gonna use the flat face here. I'm gonna press it up against this side and then just rotate it on in there. As you can see, it's a pretty tight fit, but with the little kind of rotation method there, you can sneak them in and out that way pretty easily. So we're gonna go over to the other side and we're gonna grind that out over there to make sure that our hardware fits into the access hole over there. All right, so now we know all of our hardware is gonna fit. We're ready to start putting it in the frame. So we're gonna grab our coiled wire here. We're gonna start on the outside of the frame. Towards the rear of your vehicle, as far back as you can go on the side of the frame, you're gonna have a hole located there. We're gonna push the coiled end of our wire in the hole and then bring it out this larger slotted hole that we modified here a little bit. So in we go, and then angle it towards the rear. And then you're probably gonna have to stick your finger in the hole here to help it out a little bit. Yeah, we went a little too far. There it is. All right, so a little trick we can do here to make it a little easier. We're gonna put a little bit of bend in it like that. We're gonna come back a little bit, put another one. That'll help make our fish wire kind of wanna point downward some when we're feeding this in. And there it is, right there. So now we're gonna grab one of the carriage bolts and one of the spacers. We're gonna start by sliding the spacer over the coiled end, and then we're gonna thread our carriage bolt into the coiled end. There we go. All right, now we're gonna put these in the frame. So you have to put the spacer in first by itself, And then I always kind of put them in backwards, that little trick that I showed you where we're gonna kind of angle it into place and then push the bolt in there. And now we can pull our fish wire until it comes out. Once we get it to hang out the side, we're actually gonna push the bolt just to the inside like that and let it hang out there. Leave your coiled wire on it, and now we're gonna feed in our next bolt. We're gonna use the same method, but we're gonna feed it through this hole. So we're gonna grab our next coiled wire. It comes all wrapped up like this, so it takes a minute here to get it unwrapped. And now with this spacer, I'm gonna put even more aggressive bends in it because we're just going in this hole and then right out this hole. There we go. Same combination of hardware. And then we're gonna feed it in the same way. And then we're just gonna pull that down. There we go. All right, so now I'll show you the reverse fish wire technique. This one here is very similar. Again, we gotta get that thing uncoiled. Okay, so for reverse fish wire, we're gonna take our coiled end here and just hold it like this, put our spacer on it, and then our bolt. This is gonna go in the hole that was our access hole. So, just push the bolt in, push the spacer in, and then drop it back down. All right, we've got all of our hardware fed into the frame here on the driver's side. We're gonna perform the exact same procedures over on the passenger side, feeding our bolts down through the holes that mirror it over there on that side. Now with the next set of hands, we're gonna feed our hitch into position. We're gonna start on the passenger side, go up over our exhaust, and then feed it across. Sneak that in there, and then we can kind of angle it a little bit to get it around the frame. There we go. So once we get it into position, now we need to start feeding all of our fish wires in. So just grab the ones that go through the holes that they line up with. Don't forget your side one. We'll pull our side one through like that. And then the one towards the furthest front one's gonna go in this second from the front hole. And then our middle one is gonna go through the furthest rear hole in the bottom there. And then we can lift it up, raise it into position. And then if we pull our side one out through the frame there, then the hitch will kind of just drop down. It'll rest on the head of that bolt. If we do that on both sides, that'll hold our hitch up to make it easier for us to get the rest of our hardware installed. We can kind of then just shift it around as necessary. All right, so once we got those side ones pulled through, the hitch will hold itself on there. So then we just got to shift our hitch around a little bit to get our bolts to pull through. So that one pulled through okay. And that one pulled through okay, but you can see all the holes are kind of slotted. So you might have to shift it left or right, forward or backward, just a little bit to where each one pulls through. Once you get them all pulled through, we'll take our coiled ends and we'll just unthread those, or you can just pull them off of there. You don't need to reuse them, but I kind of like to hang on to them just in case we need it for if we have any kind of issue or something and we need to relocate these bolts or something. We'll then put our nut on there, just like that, and we're just going to kind of repeat that for each of our bolts. Remove our coiled wire and then place our flange nut on them. All right, now we can put our exhaust back into position. We do have these kind of loose still. You can see they're just kind of hand tight. So that way if we do need to still move the hitch back and forth, we still may need to. And that's what we're going to check first. So this is the hardware we're going to use. We're not going to use the factory bolts. It gets you get longer ones that come in your kit due to the thickness of our hitch being there. You also get a washer you want to place on there. Now before we go to put the exhaust back up, I'm just going to take each bolt and I'm going to thread it into the hole because I want to know that it's going to line up before we lift this heavy exhaust. So I'm just checking. That one went up okay. Thread it into the hole. This side over here. And that one worked out all right. Now we're just going to go over to the other side and check those because if we have to shift it over there, we're going to have to recheck this side because if we move it, it may make these not line up. So just check each one real fast. Yeah, I can see we're pretty far off on the other side. And what you can actually do is we're going to take a bolt and thread it into there. We're gonna grab another one, thread it into here since we know these are accessible right now. And this way, if they're threaded in there, when we go to move the other side, we know these still have to be lined up. So now we're gonna move this side as necessary to get our holes to line up. And we need to go a little bit further forward with it. So we're just gonna grab our rubber mallet here to give us some assistance with this. Almost there. Okay, we tap that into place, and now we just need to see if our bolts line up. All right, they line up on this side. We know they're lined up on the other side, so at this point, we can we'll lift our exhaust back up, and we'll put our bolts through those hangers. I like to start with the other side just because this side's already so close. When we can start on this side, it really doesn't matter which side you start on. There we go. There we go. Got it to start in there. And then same thing here on the other side. We're going to use the same hardware. Make sure to line it up with our hole. And actually, I can put this one here in the wrong hole. If we're looking at it here, you can see that there's two sets. And this one towards the rear, we actually need to be in this hole. And you can actually, I should have paid attention. If you look at the markings where your previous bolts were, you can see the roundness of the head of that bolt. So that's usually a good visual cue for you to help you when you're reinstalling stuff. I always usually look for that. Should have paid attention. So we're just going to remove this bolt. We're going to slide our exhaust towards us a little bit over here to get into that other slot and then put that back in. All right, so we got that moved over to the other slot. And we were able to get our other one started up in there. So we're going to do the other side now. Before we tighten our bolts down, it's usually easier if you just get everything kind of hand tight. We can now go back and tighten down all of our hardware. We're going to do the bottom bolts first and then the side. We're going to use a 19 millimeter socket for our larger nuts and a 13 millimeter for the smaller bolts. Once you've got all of your hardware snug down, we can go back and torque it to the specifications outlined in our instructions. And that completes our look at CURT's 1 1/4 inch trailer hitch receiver on our 2018 Ford Escape.